In this self-reflection video, I'm going to be going over chapter 7. I was aware of a lot of the terms that were in chapter 7 before I took this class, so like multiple relationships, dual relationship with the client. My teacher did go over the positives and the negatives and how oftentimes counselors must use their judgment, but also must ask some self-important internal questions. Some of them were listed in the book, but my teacher previously went over it with us. I think the most crucial thing about multiple relationships or forming those multiple relationships, if you are doing it purposely, is you have to ask yourself, is this going to benefit the client at the end of the day? And there are situations that I learned previously that, you can't afford, it happens, like your counselor sometimes be like related to your brother, or there's a relation there that makes you have a dual relationship, but they strongly advise against it, but it's up to the client because sometimes it can help the therapeutic process, but it's important that the counselor takes it into account. Boundary crossing and boundary violation was something that I knew about previously, and when I first learned about it, I was interested, when I took the class for my CASAC, I was interested in the difference between the two, boundary crossing, how it can potentially help the client, and boundary violation can potentially harm the client. I also learned that home-based therapies, and while there are certain roles that may be different, I find this productive, especially for clients that have difficulty coming to an office. I did learn about home therapy in my previous class. That I think that doing home therapy, sometimes there's role confusion, sometimes you'll be asked to run errands, certain things, and one topic that was discussed in my CASAC, because I am in a small town, they did go over advantages and disadvantages to working in a small town, and there are many advantages, but in my opinion, from learning all the negatives and positives, the negatives do outweigh the positives, just because there's too many interactions that could potentially harm the client, especially if you're in a close-knit community and you're friends with them all the time. That can definitely cause real confusion, especially if you're new to the field, like I would be. I wouldn't be confident building a relationship with a client when I first starting out. Bartering was something that was just in my last class. I don't really feel comfortable doing it. Receiving gifts is something that might have a cultural significance, and my teacher did go over if it's a part of the cultural significance. It's important to understand the background, but in general, anything over a certain amount of money you probably shouldn't accept, in my personal opinion, and obviously everyone has their unique standpoints on it, but if you're doing gifts exchanges, the client could have a different idea of what it means. And additionally, the social life with a client is frowned upon, but you can technically go into a relationship with a client 6 months after your therapeutic relationship ends. So one question I had trouble with was do multiple relationships should not be considered appropriate or unethical in all circumstances, but should be decided based on a case-by-case basis. My initial response was that it was unethical by any means to have a dual relationship. However, I kept going back and forth because I do understand both positive and negatives, but I again used a personal bias to answer the question, so it once again was hard for me to remove my own personal bias from the question and answer it in a non-biased professional way, and look at it in a transparent way, and look at it as in like it might help the client and not see it my own lens. And I think that it can benefit the client, but I tend to want to be professional all the times. I didn't learn anything about myself during this week, but some deeper questions this week brought up to me was, if it's easier to be friends with client, is it easier to be friends with client and form dual relationships with them? Do you understand your client more than someone who does not? What constitutes a dual relationship in the counseling world? And if I wanted to work with a previous client, would that make me unethical?